What's up, everybody? Nate here. And needless to say, with our economy nearing a recession, inflation hitting over 40-year highs, our workforce all out of whack, and supply chain issues, millennials are getting screwed again. A new study from CNBC showed that millennials are delaying some major purchases in their life right now because of things like inflation. I'm talking a new house and a new car. Not only that, but with interest rates going up, millennials are just getting priced out of the market left and right, and they're not able to buy all of the same goods and services as they were back in 2020 and in 2021. Now, if you're listening to this and saying, Nate, I don't care about millennials, well, the thing is, you probably should, because millennials are a huge part of our economy right now, and they're the ones that are driving a lot of our spending and our economic growth. So without millennials spending, what exactly is going to happen to our economy? Well, today I want to break all of this down, and I want to go over why millennials are really stopping their spending in 2022. And if you're a millennial like me, make sure to smash that thumbs up button below, ring that notification bell too, and sub if you haven't already. That way you don't miss any of the uploads over here, and I can keep making videos just like this one. So it's no secret in our economy that we have an inflation problem. So inflation by definition is when the monetary supply of a country goes way up. Now that can benefit an economy in the short term, but you also have these really bad problems in the long term with prices continuing to go up. As prices continue to go up and things in our economy get a whole lot more expensive, well, the only solution is you need to bring down inflation, or you need to make a whole lot more money. Americans, especially millennials, don't really have much control over inflation in general, so they have to try to make a whole lot more money. But that is a serious problem in today's economy because businesses are not putting out like they were in 2020 and in 2021. You're not going to get the same wages because a lot of businesses are expecting our economy to go into a recession. So as fewer and fewer millennials go out and spend their money, that means there's going to be a lot less money circulating throughout the economy. And the reason being is because millennials are driving a lot of those sales and a lot of the money that these businesses are getting. Millennials right now are at their peak age for money making. So most millennials are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s right now. So they are going to probably make more money right now than they ever will in their entire lives. That also means that they can go out and spend more money than they ever will be able to. But the problem is our economy is constricting millennials so much right now. So at this point, they can't even go out and spend. That kind of creates an interesting situation because millennials are driving so much economic activity in the United States that if they stop spending, our economy is definitely going to run into a recession. Businesses simply won't be able to make all of the sales that they need to stay afloat. So they're going to have a whole lot of problems because of that. And if they don't have as many sales, then they're not going to be able to keep as many workers. And on top of that, they're not going to be able to produce as many things. So even the millennials that keep their jobs or are millionaires and make a ton of money are still going to be affected by this. And at some point, prices are going to go up so high that not even the really wealthy millennials are going to be able to afford as many things. That is sort of the entire purpose of what the Federal Reserve is doing to our economy right now. In 2022, they started to raise their interest rates. They raised them by 25 basis points, then 50, then 75, all in an effort to try and bring down inflation. Basically, they control the monetary supply of the United States. They decide how much money is effectively going to get printed, and they make it a whole lot harder for all of your banks and financial institutions to get their money. So if these banks and financial institutions have a hard time getting their money, well, then they're going to make it harder for you to use theirs. That's why you start to see interest rates at banks and financial institutions go up as the Federal Reserve raises its rates. And this hits a lot of other industries too. It's going to hit the food industry. It's going to hit the energy industry because a lot of millennials are not going to go out on road trips. They're not going to go traveling by airplane if they simply can't afford to do so. So they're going to want to stay at home and they're not going to be spending any of their money. What's also important here is millennials, at least least from my experience, typically have a ton of money in savings. Throughout their entire lives, millennials were taught that they need to save money. This was the pinnacle of financial success. If you are a good saver, then you are suddenly really good with your money. Now, obviously that is not necessarily true, but millennials have kind of kept this ideology all throughout their lives, so they have a ton of money, but as the prices for things go up, they are not able to spend as much, and they don't want to. The University of Michigan recently published its Consumer Sentiment Index for June, and it showed that Americans in general are feeling really badly about our economy, and they don't want to go out and spend. They don't want to buy a home. They don't want to go traveling. They just want prices to come down, and they believe inflation is the root cause of all of that. Now, what I find the most interesting about this entire situation is right now in the United States, and actually globally, we have one of the greatest and largest wealth transfers in history going on. This is going on from the baby boomers and trickling all of that wealth down to the millennials and also Gen X and even members of Gen Z. All of these trillions upon trillions of dollars are trickling down because baby boomers are retiring or they're passing away and they have accumulated a ton of wealth. As that happens, millennials are going to get a lot more money, so they might not actually have to make as much money from their jobs anymore, meaning that we could see a lot less millennials working in the future, and that might be okay for a short time. However, not every single millennial, not every single member of Gen Z or Gen X is going to have a wealthy grandparent or somebody that they know that's going to trickle down all of this money. That means this could be a really big squeeze for millennials, and we might not ever see this wealth transfer again in American history. Simply put, millennials are in their best money-making years right now. So with an impending recession and super high inflation all sucking up all of the money in our economy, well, millennials just aren't going to be able to earn as much as previous generations. So they're not going to be able to afford as much. They're not going to be able to have a house. They're not going to be able to have a car, or they're not going to be able to have all of those really nice assets that they can eventually trickle down to their children or grandchildren. So not only does this millennial situation kind of hurt our economy today, it's probably going to hurt them in the future. Millennials might not get this opportunity again to make this much money, so there's just going to be a lot slower of growth for our economy. It's really going to depend on what happens with the next generation, like Gen Z or even Gen Y. If those generations can make a whole lot more money and really stimulate economic spending, then our economy can continue to grow. But if those generations make less than the millennials did, well, then our entire economy and GDP is going to pretty much perpetually shrink. Or it's going to grow at an extremely slow rate, meaning other countries are going to overtake us in GDP growth, like China. And it also means that millennials might end up having to work until they die. I mean, literally, they're not going to have a lot of the assets to fall back on because of lack of retirement savings, so they might end up having to work forever, something that not a lot of generations have done across the board in the past. And to kind of end this video on a good note, there is still a chance that the economic conditions that we're facing right now might end sometime soon, and millennials can get a lot further along and get back on track. The simple idea is when you have a recession, you basically have a reset of your entire economy. The stock market is going to go down and lose all of its gains that it saw just before the recession started, and the housing market is going to go down. Cryptocurrency and commodities are also going down, and we're seeing that in 2022. What that does is create an opportunity for those that can see it. There is always an opportunity out there for you to grow your wealth, and millennials, if nothing else, can take this as an opportunity to hold on to a lot of these assets for the long term, and hopefully they can go up and appreciate in value by the time they are to retire. The longest recession in the United States lasted around 18 months. The Federal Reserve right now is predicting that the US was in a recession in Q2 2022. So most likely by the end of 2023, the US will be out of this recession and starting to grow again. So at some point, millennials are going to be able to go out and get better jobs, make a whole lot more money, and start buying assets once again. It really just is going to depend on what millennials do with their money and how millennials survive this incoming recession. And how they spend all of that baby boomer money. If a lot of that money is spent on assets and growing their wealth, then millennials could end up being the wealthiest generation in American history. They're basically compounding trillions of dollars of wealth that was already there. Many millennials from the CNB survey are really confident that inflation is going to go away by the end of next year. They are confident that the Federal Reserve is eventually going to get a handle on it, and they're confident that our economy can start expanding in 2023 and that assets are eventually going to hit new record highs. And they have no reason to not believe that, because during all of these economic times of trouble in the past, well, the Federal Reserve has eventually gotten a handle on inflation, our economy eventually started to grow again, our recession eventually ended, and of course, the stock market and the other asset markets and the housing market all eventually went back up to set new record highs. Every single time things have crashed, they have gone back up. So I know it's kind of doom and gloomy for millennials right now, and they're not going to be able to have a lot of money in the short term, which is only going to make our GDP problems worse, but there is a potential for really bright things in the future. But now I want to hear from you on this issue. What do you think about millennials basically getting screwed again in Q2 2022? Do you think that millennials are eventually going to go out and spend and be the driving force behind the stimulation of our economy? Or do you think millennials have lost their shot? They're not going to be able to make any more money because our economy is basically going to continue to go down for the long term. Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all of the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another one ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.